Hello my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. This is the exciting time of year when everybody's doing their best of lists, and it's a tough thing for me to do because, well, number one, I read a lot, over 400 books this year, and I choose well. So 156 of those books I gave 5 stars to. That's way too many books to talk about on a best of list. So I started off by narrowing it down to 36 books. So I made those into a bunch of different categories, best graphic memoir, best translated fiction, all those kind of things. And I posted that on my book blog, so I will include a link to that below if you want the extended list, but even 36 books is too many to talk about in a video. Fortunately, I was able to narrow it down even further to a top 10. This is my top 10 of today of books that I read in 2023. They might have been published at different times, but just books that I read in 2023. And I could easily change my mind about them, but like I said, this is what I've got for now. And I'm going to go through them in order from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One's the best, okay? I did notice a few things about these best books. Many of them are by Canadian authors. There's a lot of queer content, a lot of non-white authors in my top books. So this is a reflection of the kinds of books that I am particularly focusing on in the past 10 years or so. I've got fiction and I've got nonfiction. I've got books for adults and books for kids. One book for kids made it on my top 10 list. What else? Oh yes, a lot of my favorite books are books that I read with other people. So buddy reads, and I will mention which ones were buddy reads in this top 10 list. The extra time that we take when we're reading closely, spending time discussing with other people, or at least one other person, really makes a difference in how much I get out of a book. So coming in at number 10 is Mercy Jean by J.D. Derbyshire. J.D. uses they, them pronouns. They are a comedian and playwright, currently based in Vancouver, I think. Canadian, anyway. And a comparison to Hannah Gadsby is actually pretty good, because in Mercy Jean, this is autofiction, and they're talking about neurodiversity and being queer and mental health and a whole journey through that. And there are parts that are so very funny and other parts that are truly heartbreaking. And it's a fantastic book. Number 9 is nonfiction, Valley of the Bird Tail, An Indian Reserve, A White Town, and The Road to Reconciliation. It's got 2 authors, one white, one Indigenous, Andrew Stobo Snyderman and Douglas Sanderson. I first heard about this on Shawn the Bookmaniac's channel, and I am going to link to an interview that he did with the authors. You'll find out a whole bunch more about this book if you watch that. This is one that I did as a buddy read with my friend Kathy. It's all about this little town in northern Manitoba and the Indian reserve that's right across the river from it, and the difference in the lives of these two individuals in these two communities. And it's about just how very unequal things are in Canadian society when you're comparing Indigenous populations to non-Indigenous populations. The really great thing about this book is the solutions that are found in these communities, and you know what the authors have got to say about positive developments for the future and reconciliation. And there was actually another book about reconciliation that made my top 36, so go check out that blog post if you're interested. At number 8 on my list, I've got a novel by a Indigenous author who lives in Canada, Alicia Elliott, who's Haudenosaunee, and this one is called And Then She Fell. It is about a new mother, a young woman who is newly living off the reserve. She's in Toronto with her white husband, and she has a baby who's only like 6 weeks old, and this mother is got postpartum psychosis. We're in first person. It is so uncomfortable to be inside her head as she's experiencing small and big acts of racism around her in the city. And if you stick with this book, it pays off so big in the end. Things get wild. I like that kind of story, and I like the kind of book that makes me really think about things, look at things in a new way, and Then She Fell is that kind of book. At number 7, I've got a kid's picture book that's actually in graphic novel format. It's Wolf Suit by Sid Sharp. Sid Sharp is non-binary, uses they, them pronouns, I believe. Their art is zany, wild, so much fun, rich colors, and the story goes through so many emotions: happy, anxious, seriously fearful, and then relief. And I was on this journey through the story. I've read it several times, and at the end I always either cry or feel close to tears, because this sheep feels so much fear for the wolves outside that the sheep makes himself a wolf suit, and so goes out in disguise. The only way to go out in the world is to be in disguise, and not being able to smell flowers because of the sewed up, because of being in a suit, and not being able to see very well about what's around outside. So the problems when you're trying to live in disguise, incognito, but by the end discovers some true friends that they can be themselves with, and they're no longer afraid to open the blinds and let the sun come into their house. And oh, I just love it so much. At number 6, I've got a novel, We Meant Well by Aram Shazia Hassan. This is emotionally intense. That's one of the themes in the top 10, And Then She Fell, also emotionally intense. It's heartfelt, it's a page turner, it's set in an unnamed country where there are orphanages, there's a civil war going on in this country, and our central character is part of a charity, the head of some orphanages set up there. And the story shows the many layered consequences that are a result of global history and colonization. And yeah, very, very well done. Hassan is a Canadian author, I think living in the US, not sure about that. This next author, Darren Bell, is definitely American. His memoir is The Talk, and it's written in graphic novel format. It's a big, fat graphic novel. Every page needs to be there. He's a biracial political cartoonist, the first African American ever to win a Pulitzer Prize for political cartooning, and that was in 2019. So you know his art is going to be good. He's got a very fluid ink wash kind of style. A lot of the book is monochromatic, grays and blues and so on, but there are pops of full color used really well. So the title, The Talk, you probably know this. This is referring to a specific conversation that Black parents have with their children, particularly boy children, when they get to an age where the parents are concerned for their safety. That they have to explain to them that they are not going to be treated the same as little white boys. And police officers, other people in authority, are going to see them as a threat. I can't imagine how heartbreaking this must be for parents to have this kind of talk with their children, talking about how unfair the world is. And they've got to do it when their kids are quite young, because it starts young. And Darren Bell talks about his mother, who's white, has the talk with him, and we see that it's with good reason. Many incidents happen to Darren Bell through his school years and into university, and we end with him being a parent of young children and with his wife sitting down with their son to have the talk. And it's so sad that this is still necessary in our society today. But there is hope. Darren Bell's cartoons about racism and bigotry are part of what's making a difference, I think, in awareness and protests. Black Lives Matter in the street. You know, I really hope things are changing. At number 4, I have Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shree, and this is translated by Daisy Rockwell. This book won the International Booker Prize in 2022, and I buddy read this with Roz of Scallydandling About the Books. I had tried it first in audiobook, and I didn't get very far, so buddy read was definitely the way to go, and in the print format. The prose is so very playful, and it's a novel that really stretches the form of what a novel can be, and I love innovation in writing. Well, this one is certainly full of surprises. And there's this bubbly, fun lightness through the whole book, but underneath, simmering, there's trauma, because our central character is somebody who is directly affected by the partition of India and Pakistan. And there's something visceral under there that really adds a lot of gravitas to the book. It's fantastic. At number 3, I've got another work of translation, Alberta Alone by Cora Sandell, and it's translated by Elizabeth Rocan. Another buddy read. I read this with Marilyn Maya Mendoza. I will link her channel below, and Roz's channel also. You'll find it down below. This is actually the third in the Alberta trilogy, and this one came out in 1939. I think the very first book in the trilogy, Alberta and Jacob, came out in 1926. Marilyn and I buddy read the second one, Alberta and Freedom, last year, and it was one of my top books last year, so I guess it's not surprising that this one made the list this year. And what is it about the book? It's, well, the writing, superb sentences, structure, but also the character. Alberta, she's a writer, she's a mother with conflicted feelings about motherhood and how motherhood presents a lot of challenges to a woman's creative output. It's very feminist. There are so many obstacles for women, and Alberta is living a life that's not typical of her time and place. The novel starts out in France, and she ends up in Norway, which is where Alberta is from, also where the author Cora Sandell is from. Just such a satisfying book. Loved it. And next, at number 2, I have a Canadian queer novel, Your Driver is Waiting by Priya Guns. Once again, I have emotional intensity here. This book is so fierce and funny. The central character is fantastic. She is a rideshare driver. The story's themes about the working poor and systemic oppression, all this social commentary that's in there. I love this kind of mix where you have a propulsive story, our main character, who's South Asian, falls in love with a white woman, and yeah, there's a clash, but there's also society going on around them in this unnamed city. So fabulous. And at number 1, best book for the whole year, I read it way back in January, No Friend But the Mountains, Writings from Manu's Prison. It's by Behrooz Bochani, translated by Omid Tofigian. And I listened to the audiobook, which has quite a few different narrators. That works actually really well because the story behind the publishing of this nonfiction book, it was smuggled out bit by bit in voice messages from Buchani, being illegally held in a prison on an island off the shore of Australia. I talked about it at length with Shelly Swearingen, another booktuber. She has this series that she did called Superlatives, And I will link that video below if you want to hear more about this outstanding book, multi-award winning book. Yeah, #1 of the year. So that's all I'm going to tell you about today. Like I said, if you want to know more about other books that didn't quite make the list, I will link my blog post below. And I am going to keep watching other booktubers' best of 2023 lists. I've got a project in mind that these will come into it. But maybe you're a subscriber who doesn't have a channel, you're not doing a top 2023 list. Well, tell me down in the comments below, what was your favorite book this year? And tell me if you've read any of these books that I've talked about. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I know not every book is for every reader, but these are my personal favorites. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to say goodbye now, and I'll see you soon.